It is so fun to have a huge menu full of things that you love and get excited about baking. But if you're trying to bake 10 different items on a bake day, or you're offering 12 different flavors of inclusion breads every week, you're going to burn yourself out. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Breadwinner Podcast. This is the show for sourdough micro bakery owners who want to build a thriving, profitable, sustainable business without sacrificing your sleep or your sanity. I'm your host, Caroline Bauer, and I'm really excited to dive into today's topic. We're going to talk about planning out your ideal week. If you've been feeling overwhelmed with your baking schedule or you're struggling with balancing your business with your family life, you're in the right place. Today, we're going to get super tactical, and I'm sharing with you my exact strategy for scheduling out a week that maximizes productivity and minimizes stress. So grab a notebook and let's get started. Before we get in too deep, I will tell you down in the show notes, there is a link to download the free schedule that I have designed. There's a weekly version and a daily version. You can use both or use one to help you map out a week that works well for you. All right, first things first, let's talk about the foundation of your ideal week. Before we get really into the nitty-gritty of scheduling, it's essential to have a clear picture of what you want to accomplish in your week and what is most important. So before you start scheduling out your bake days or when to prep your cookie dough, there are two questions to ask yourself. Number one is, what are the top 3 goals in my personal life this week? We're starting with personal because you are more than your business. So this might be spending quality time with your spouse, cuddling with your kids, taking them to the library. This might be going for a walk by yourself or pursuing a hobby. It doesn't matter what this is, but before you start scheduling out your business, establish your top 3 personal goals for your week. After you've done that, ask the same question, but flip it around to your business. What are your top 3 goals in your micro bakery this week? They might be increasing sales, posting once or twice on social media, trying a new recipe, responding to someone that you need to reach out to. It doesn't matter what your goals are in your bakery either, just write them down. Now that we've established our top 3 goals in both our personal life and in our bakery, we're going to talk about how to get them done and make sure that everything else gets done too. Well, maybe not everything, because sometimes an effective, ideal week means that the most important things happen and other things don't. One of the most effective ways to schedule out your time is to utilize a strategy called time blocking. This is a strategy that many successful people utilize to make sure that they have the time allocated for the things that need to happen, and they also allocate the time for extra things. So before you start blocking out time for your cookie dough or mixing your scones, start out by blocking time in your schedule for those personal priorities. If you were to look at my schedule, you would see that every single day I have a block of time for sleep and a block of time for my meals. Everything else gets scheduled around those because those are the top priority in keeping myself healthy and therefore keeping everything else running smoothly. In addition to those time blocks, add in your non-negotiables such as school drop-off or morning workout or Bible study or church. Whatever is the immovable times in your week, add those first. Now we'll move on to the baking schedule. Once you have those rigid time blocks, the ones that are non-negotiable, once they're established, let's move into your baking schedule. Now, up to now, we've been coming at this from the perspective of someone who is fully working a baking job. But I realize that not everyone is doing that. So if you are building a bakery business alongside a job, whether it's a 9-to-5 from an office or you work from home or whatever your situation looks like, take what I'm saying, but then also turn it to accommodate your work schedule as well. You certainly have a unique challenge and a whole different immovable chunk of time in your day to work around. But time blocking can be all the more effective for you if you know how to allocate the time in the the spaces that you have available. So now we're going to talk about allocating and dividing our time into the actual tasks of running the bakery. I like to divide my baking tasks into batches and categories. So for the sake of this episode, I'm just going to share my exact week for you as if I was planning out a farmer's market week. So when I'm scheduling my week, I start out on Monday. Monday is generally my off day or the day that I get groceries. So I would block out time for things like swimming with my kids or taking them to the library, and then a chunk of time for getting groceries. That's going to be usually a 2-hour chunk, sometime between mid-morning to afternoon. Other things that I would add to my calendar on a Monday would be ordering packaging, pre-measuring ingredients, and prepping my starter. Tuesday is usually a prep day, but a light prep day. I would also block out time on Tuesdays for things like a coffee date with a friend or taking my kids to a museum or going for a long walk. But on Tuesdays, I would do things like prep scones or prepare my inclusions for my bread dough. Like I mentioned, I like to group a lot of my tasks together. So if I can knock out all of my inclusions, chop up all my herbs, shred all my cheese, have that all done, then I know that that part of my work, I don't even have to think about until it's time to pull that out. Doing that, blocking out your time like that helps you stay organized and it helps decrease your mental load. So you have fewer things going on in your brain because you know that you have already taken care of a big chunk of the responsibilities for your week and they were on your calendar and you knocked them out. Going back to the schedule of my farmer's market week, moving on to Wednesday and Thursday, these are big dough days for me. So Wednesday, I would be mixing up usually the bulk of my dough for my rustic loaves. So my calendar is going to look like scheduling out a chunk of time first thing in the morning to mix my dough and then do my stretch and folds in my bins. And then I would have a block of open time where maybe I'm going to go swimming with my kids before I need to come back to the kitchen to shape my loaves and get them put in the fridge. If my schedule has space for it on Wednesdays, I like to also mix up cookie dough and scone dough if I didn't do it on Tuesday. Cookies go into the fridge for a day and then into the freezer until I need to bake them. And then scone dough goes into the freezer and stays there until I am ready to bake it. On Thursdays, another dough day, I mix up sandwich bread dough, focaccia, and whatever other product I might be bringing, such as cinnamon rolls or English muffins or brownies. Usually this takes 4 or 5 hours in a couple of blocks of hours. And so other things can happen around that, whether that's cleaning the house, running errands, spending time with friends, hanging out with the kids, family time, prepping meals for the family. Those are other blocks of time that would be scheduled around my bakery work. By Friday, I have all of my dough prepped in the fridge, ready to bake. So Friday is a big day for me in preparation for my market on Saturday. And as you've noticed, I have spread out a lot of my tasks between Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. If I wanted or needed to kind of condense some of those tasks and have a bigger prep day on, say, Thursday, I could rearrange some of those blocks of time rather than spreading it out so much throughout the week. But back to Friday. So Friday's going to be my big bake day. I generally like to reverse engineer my schedule on Friday. I start by determining when I want to be in bed. It's usually about 8 o'clock. I love sleep. So I reverse engineer starting with my bedtime and working backward. If I want to be in bed by 8, I need to start winding down by 7. We're eating together at 6. That means that I need to have my bread packaged by about 5. So it needs to be out of the oven with enough time to cool before then. You see what I'm getting at? So I'm reverse engineering. If I have 5 hours of baking to do, and everything needs to be cool enough to package by 5. If packaging is going to take an hour, then I'm going to start packaging at 4. So if I know that I need to have everything all the way packaged by 5, so I can prepare for dinner, feed my family, get ready for bed. And I have 5 hours worth of baking. Then I'm starting baking between 10 and 11 to get everything baked and cooled before I need to package it. This ensures that I have everything done and then an hour or two to eat, wind down, and be in bed in time to be fully rested and ready to start my day on Saturday, which is market day. This is my whole thought process, okay? And this is why we plan ahead so that we're not doing this on the day of the bake day. Then my market starts early on Saturday, so I load up the car on Saturday morning. Sometimes I also bake off my cookies and scones. So I would get up around 6 in the morning to turn on the oven, get those baked, and then let them cool enough to package and leave the house by 8. So when we're thinking about scheduling out our ideal week, we need to make sure that we are scheduling both time for work and rest, but then also things like our admin and marketing tasks. So generally I do this on Mondays, which is the day that I work the least, except for Sunday, which is just a rest day. This includes things like managing my website, planning social media content, having a dedicated day for these tasks, make sure that they actually get done and don't just kind of pile up. Sometimes I think that maybe I can knock them out in between batches going in the oven, but it never actually really happens. So blocking out time on your schedule to make sure that the admin and marketing, bookkeeping tasks happen each week is going to ensure that those tasks get checked off and don't pile up and fall by the wayside. Now that we've talked about time blocking and utilizing time blocking as a way to make sure that all the things happen in a week, let's talk about streamlining our processes. So we've touched on this a little bit already, but to go a little bit deeper, one of the ways to have a successful week is to streamline your processes. And here are a few tips to help you work smarter, not harder. Prep in advance where you can. This might look like on Mondays, taking some time to prep for the week ahead, pre-measuring ingredients, cleaning your equipment, resetting your space, and starting out the week with everything lined up and ready to be productive so that you're not trying to clean up or organize or prepare your ingredients while you're in the midst of a whole bunch of other processes. Another trick for streamlining your processes is to automate wherever possible. This might look like using scheduling tools for social media posts. Maybe you write out a month worth of content and you use a scheduling platform like Canva to post the content for you so that you don't need to log in and then get trapped in a scrolling cycle and lose an hour before you even know what happened. This could also look like setting up automated email replies for frequently asked questions, or even just an email template that you can tweak according to the specific question, but that way you're not reinventing the wheel. I utilize texting more than email in my business, and I have a few text templates so that, for example, if a customer texts me and says they're going to be late or asks if they can pick up tomorrow instead of today, I have my template ready so I don't have to think about how to respond. I just change their name and change whatever I need to according to the situation. And that takes a lot of the brain power out of crafting a response. It's kind of already done for me. Along the same lines of automation is considering outsourcing. Now, this comes in especially as you're growing a larger business, but sometimes it makes more sense to outsource a task rather than to do it yourself. For me, I occasionally get groceries delivered rather than going and picking up my groceries because the time that I would spend going and shopping is more valuable spent here doing bakery tasks than going and shopping. And so I'm willing to pay the extra delivery expense sometimes when it makes sense. One more way to streamline your processes is to simplify your menu. It is so fun to have a huge menu full of things that you love and get excited about baking. But if you're trying to bake 10 different items on a bake day, or you're offering 12 different flavors of inclusion breads every week, you're going to burn yourself out. So simplifying your menu could mean saying no to custom requests. I don't take custom requests at all. I do consider flavor requests for future menus, but I'm not going to bake a one-off specific special flavor in a given week just for someone who asks for it. Now, you may have a business that has custom requests built into it and you charge accordingly and you schedule accordingly, and that's totally fine. But if special requests are making you spend a lot of time on something that you have not allocated for, then I encourage you to eliminate that stressor in your business. Just focus on a core selection of products that you love, that you get excited about baking, and that you know will produce consistent results every time and your customers keep coming back for. Bring in a new flavor every week or two, but don't bring in 5 new flavors. Keep it sustainable and keep it manageable and keep it fun for you. This not only makes your baking schedule more predictable, but it also helps you build a strong identity within your brand. People know what to expect from you. For example, the only sweet that I consistently offer is my cookies, and people know and love my cookies. They know that I always offer them, and so they come back for them. I rotate my scones, and I don't even offer them every week. So people know and love my scones, but that is not part of my brand identity in the way that my cookies is. All right, no scheduling talk is complete without talking about self-care and flexibility. So running a micro bakery from home is demanding and exhausting, rewarding and fulfilling, but demanding and exhausting. So it is vital to take care of yourself and to build that into your schedule. And then also to plan for the inevitable hiccups. So when you are planning out your ideal week, make sure that you're scheduling in your downtime. This might look like blocking out an hour for a bath after the kids go down, or a quiet afternoon with a book or a new Magnolia magazine. We're taking a walk out in nature, taking a break for a coffee date with a friend. Just remember, if you are depleted, if you're exhausted, you are not going to be showing up well. So it is really important that you block out intentional time for doing the things that restore you. Okay, so while having a plan is essential, we really cannot function efficiently, effectively, and sustainably without a clear plan. Inevitably, things are going to happen. For example, I blocked out time this weekend to record a bunch of podcasts while my kids were gone with my mother-in-law, and then she was not able to take them. So I had to adapt and switched my recording day to Friday from Saturday. And so things like that happen. It's okay. We just roll with it, but be ready to navigate it with grace and to tweak your schedule as needed. In future episodes, we're going to talk about what to do when you can't show up on a day. Something terrible happens or something unforeseen happens, and you just need to humbly come to your customers and say, I can't do it. We'll have an episode coming up for that, but just know those big things don't happen often, but small things do. So be ready to build in some flexibility into your schedule. All right, and then one final thing that may or may not be scheduled in, but is important to consider is to celebrate your wins. If you're celebrating a really big win, I'd say definitely block off an hour or two of time to take yourself out and pamper yourself or have a date with your spouse or celebrate big. But even if your wins are small, take some time to celebrate those wins if you got a fabulous review or you hit a sales goal. Have a plan and an idea of how you're going to celebrate yourself in those moments too. Doing that is going to help you stay motivated and positive and moving forward and loving what you're doing. So to recap, we talked about the importance of time blocking and how to use it, scheduling around your immovable top priorities, your personal life, and then adding in your baking responsibilities from there. We talked about streamlining processes and finding ways to batch tasks together to be more effective. And we talked about automating whenever it's possible to take off the repetitive tasks from your plate and put them on autopilot when possible. We talked about simplifying your menu as a way to streamline your tasks, to make sure that you are showing up in a way that is consistent and repeatable and keeps you excited and having fun in your bakery. And then we talked about the importance of scheduling in blocks of time to take care of yourself. I hope these tips were helpful. They gave you some ideas on how to improve your week for efficiency and sustainability. So I would love to hear what you thought. If this episode gave you some ideas or helped you rethink a way that you do your process, I would love to hear about it. Take a screenshot of the show, put it up in your Instagram stories, and tag me at Caroline Bower, BOWER_sourdough. So I can see where you're listening and get connected with you. I'll share it and we can all connect and get excited together. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the show if you haven't already. I would love if you would give it a rating to tell other people what you thought of this show. It helps the show be found. And don't forget to download the free planner from the show notes. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Breadwinner Podcast. I can't wait for next time. Until then, happy baking, friends.